fruits, specifically those of the devil variety. Who has one? Who doesn't have one? Who is going to get one? Who dies? Who lives? Who tells your story? So this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while about who in One Piece we might see obtain a devil fruit before the end of the series. Because when you break it down, despite the fact that devil fruit powers are pretty much the main magic system in One Piece, it's very rare that we've actually seen any characters actually get one outside of in flashbacks. There's been more than a few times where we've seen the origin story of how a particular character got their devil fruit. Trafalgar Law comes to mind, as does Buggy, Ace in his manga. But when it comes to characters in the present day, characters we are introduced to as non-fruit users and then go on to become fruit users are surprisingly rare. There's very few who fit into that category. There are a couple of notable ones. Sabo is the first for me who comes to mind. The other big ones that come to mind for me are Kaku and Caliphate. Something that I absolutely loved about Enies Lobby was the intrigue and the interest and the mystique of those. We didn't know what powers those two were going to get, and so it was a fun surprise for both Kaku and Caliphate as characters within the fiction and for us as the audience to see what powers they ended up with. Other than those, there's the Blackbeard pirates. They all got a bunch of devil fruits sort of off screen, and Alvida was probably, I think, the first character who we met as a non-fruit user and then went on to become a fruit user. But the point is, even with those ticked off, that is surprisingly few characters in a series with well over 1,000 to choose from. The vast majority of the time, we are introduced to someone and either they have already got a devil fruit or they do not have a devil fruit and they remain fruitless for the entire rest of their tenure as a character. So today I want to go over a couple of people, a couple of characters who I think might break the mold on that front. If we were gonna see an Enies Lobby type situation again, where we get a mystery devil fruit and someone ends up eating it and we're like, oh, what power are they gonna get? Who are the contenders for that sort of thing if we were gonna see that happen again? Let's start off by just going through the Straw Hat crew, almost half of whom are immediately disqualified because they already have a devil fruit. Sorry to those four, but you're just not in the running. You can't have one. That leaves us with Franky, Jimbei, Nami, Usopp, Zoro, and Sanji to go through. So I'm just going to run through the crew and sort of share my thoughts on them. Notably for the crew, in one of the SBSs, Oda did reveal his picks for if they did have a fruit, what it would be. Just quickly, those are as follows. Sanji would have the Swim fruit, Nami would have the Rumble fruit, Usopp would have the Pocket fruit, the pocket fruit that one of Whitebeard's guys has, Franky would have Baby Five's Weapon fruit, and Zoro would have Kaido's fruit, although rather than Zoro himself having the fruit, it would be one of Zoro's swords that had it. And that would be pretty cool, because that would lead to the long-awaited conflict between the Wado Inchamonchi and Funkfried, which I know everyone's been waiting for. Jimbei wasn't included in this SBS question, but I have seen fan speculation that maybe the swim fruit would also apply to him. You know, if he can't swim in water anymore, maybe he can swim on land. But there's a big caveat with pretty much all of those, which is all those fruits are already taken, and to the best of our knowledge, the users are all still alive, so they can't have any of them. Get out of here, SBS. So, from bottom to top, let's start off with, I'm gonna do these in pairs, because I feel like they all fit into pairs. Franky and Jimbei, both because it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna get one. Franky is an interesting case because he is very specifically asked by Luffy to be the recipient of Ace's fruit when they're entering the tournament in Dressrosa, and he outright neglects it. He says outright that he does not want devil fruit, he does not want to become a dead weight in the water, which is fair enough because his body is like 90% metal at this point. He would sink. Funnily enough, when we first meet Franky, they think that he is a devil fruit user because he breathes fire. They think he has a fire-breathing devil fruit, but then he falls into the river and gets out and they're like, whoa, what's going on? But yeah, no devil fruit for Franky. He's outright stated he doesn't want one, so I don't think he's gonna get one. We can put him on the lowest tier of likelihood. And joining him will be Jimbei. Jimbei is a fishman, 10 times as strong as a human, incredible swimming prowess, can command sea creatures, can do fisherman karate and all sorts of crazy powerful stuff. Why the hell would Jimbei even want a devil fruit? He's already powerful enough. Any kind of devil fruit would only serve to make Jimbei weaker, so yeah, we don't need a devil fruit for him. I don't think there's any chance of that happening. Next up, let's talk about the wings of the Pirate King, Zoro and Sanji. Sanji makes an interesting case. I think of the two, Sanji is the likelier. Sanji has indeed outright stated that he wanted the invisibility fruit, which he can't have because it was owned by Absalom. It was briefly available, but then Shiryu came along and got it for himself, so no invisibility fruit for Mr. Sanji there. In addition, his Jumaretsu already allowed him to live out the dream of being invisible, so unfortunately he had his chance, but it was gone from him. Now, we've seen various cooking-based powers in the series. We've seen Struzan has the ability to turn anything into food. That could work quite well. Very recently in the manga, we've seen Killingham has the ability to sort of take food out of people's dreams. Something like that could be cool for Sanji. Maybe if Sanji felt like he wasn't powerful enough. He does deal somewhat with feelings of inadequacy, but you know, then again, he's already got like a bunch of moves already, and this is going to become a recurring theme. You know, Sanji, he's got Diable Jambe and all of that. He's got Skywalk. He's just going through the non-fruit level up tiers. And with both him and Sanji, I quite like the idea that both the Wings of the Pirate King have no fruit, whereas Luffy does. So they sort of, it's a nice sort of mirror ring. It's symmetrical, you know what I mean? So I don't think Sanji is like very likely, but he's a bit likelier than Franky and Jimbei, certainly. He's more of a mid-tier likelihood. Zoro, I think, is sort of in between. Zoro is second least likely. Possible, but Zoro's whole thing is about swords. He's never really shown any kind of interest in getting a devil fruit for himself. I feel like Zoro might consider it cheating, really, in his goal to become the world's greatest swordsman. If he were to get some kind of devil fruit to boost himself along that track, I feel like Zoro's the kind of guy who would think of it as cheating. And let's throw Mihawk into the running here as well, because they're, you know, gonna clash again at some point, and I feel like if Zoro got to Mihawk and was like, I'm here to challenge you for the title of World's Greatest Swordsman, and I've got a devil fruit now, Mihawk would be like cheating, and it would just crush Zoro. On that note, I also think we've never seen. It's possible that Mihawk might secretly have a devil fruit. Very unlikely, but possible. Yeah, I just think they're just not interested. I think they both consider it cheating. These boys, they're all about swords, not about fruits in any way. Have to assume that gives them very conflicting opinions on the mobile game Fruit Ninja. So yeah, I think we can pretty much discount them. I still think very unlikely, but just the fact that Sanji has expressed an interest in getting a devil fruit, even if the specific one he was after is no longer available, makes him a notch higher on the ladder. Nami and Usopp now. Straw Hat besties and 2/3 of the weakling trio. Nami, I think there's been a lot of like speculation about maybe Nami could get some kind of Logia fruit like Enel's fruit, as Oda put in the SBS, some kind of weather-based fruit or wind fruit, something that would be useful for navigation. Actually, if there was some kind of like intuitive navigation fruit, that could be pretty cool, like just help her like instantly know where to go. Although actually that would also be a very useful fruit for Zoro to have. Give that to him, stop him getting lost all the time. The wall I run into though with the idea of Nami getting a devil fruit at this point in the story is Nami has the climate act, which already has the ability to conjure any kind of weather phenomenon that she would like. You know, she doesn't need the lightning fruit because she can already conjure lightning, and she's got like lightning and rain and mirages and all sorts of things, and especially now with Zeus inside the climate act, there is no need for Nami to have any kind of fruit. The only thing it would really do, if she were to get some kind of Logia, it might make her a little bit stronger in like defense, you know, rather than getting hit, things would pass through her. But I just think with the climate act and Zeus, Nami's power is already at a pretty high level. In addition, if there is some sort of weather fruit, wind fruit, storm fruit in the series, I think there's a very, very high likelihood, unconfirmed at this point, but a very high likelihood that that is already in the capable hands of one Monkey D. Dad. I mean, that's pretty much all but confirmed at this point. So yeah, Nami, I think, maybe on the same tier as Sanji. You know, there's room there for her to get a fruit upgrade. She does like tangerine, so we know that she likes fruits in general. But yeah, it's the same thing as Franky. Like, Franky already has all of his gadgets and everything. Like, he's already powerful enough without the assistance of any devil fruit. Same remarks apply, I think, for Nami. However, now we get it to, I think, our most likely candidate of the Straw Hats, which is Usopp. Frequently, Usopp, and in fact, canonically, Usopp is the weakest member of the crew. Oda has outright stated he is the weakest and will always be the weakest. Usopp, more than anyone on the crew, struggles with feelings of a lack of self-worth, not being able to climb the same hurdles as the others, not being strong enough as the others. So I could absolutely see a situation where Usopp is, you know, in dire straits and he happens to be in proximity of a devil's fruit and he's like, I'm gonna take a gamble, I'm gonna eat a devil fruit even though I don't know what it is, in the chance that it will grant me a power that will enable me to assist the rest of the crew and actually fight back on their level, trying to like reach the same heights as the monster trio, things like that. I could 100% see Usopp making that decision. That feels like a very in-character move for him. In addition, we are all waiting for a big power spike for Usopp. Like, the last thing of like real significance that I can think of that he did was saving Luffy and Law on Dressrosa, unlocking Observation Haki, and defeating Sugar twice in Dressrosa. That was like the last really big thing that Usopp did. And it has to be said that we are currently on Elbaf, an island that is very intrinsic to Usopp. Ever since he found out about it, he has become very inspired and wanted to go there. It's just the idea of Elbaf has been so important to Usopp, and everyone, a lot of people, including myself, are expecting Usopp to have some kind of big Elbaf moment. So far it's not really happened, but we do have, I think, a fair bit of Elbaf left to go, so there's still a chance for him to get something in there. What if Usopp's big Elbaf moment is getting a devil fruit for himself? Getting some kind of power that allows him that strength to become a brave warrior of the sea as he's always wanted, to accomplish his dream. When you look at it, a lot of signs do point to if any member of the crew was going to get a devil fruit, Usopp would be the one. There are, however, some caveats to this. Now, you do run into a bit of a risk saying, oh, this island is going to be so-and-so's arc, you know. Whole Cake Island was unequivocally Sanji's arc, and then everyone went, right, Wano's gonna be Zoro's arc, Egghead's gonna be Franky's arc, and Zoro wasn't at a lot of things to do in Wano, but I don't know if you would necessarily call it his arc. Egghead certainly wasn't Franky's arc. If it was anyone's, it was Kuma's. So the Elbaf is gonna be Usopp's arc. Usopp's gonna have a big moment. I still really want it to happen. I've not given up hope, but you gotta take that kind of speculation with a grain of salt. One other thing against Usopp's favor is what I was saying before about Oda saying Usopp is always going to be the weakest member of the crew. Usopp's narrative role is to be the everyman. He is us, he's the reader. Like, if we were in those situations, as much as we would love to think we're gonna be the Luffy's, Zoro's, and Sanji's of the world, we're gonna be Usopp. If a big old Kaido is running at us, we're going to be running and screaming because that is scary as hell. So if Usopp were to get this kind of power spike and get a devil fruit for himself, it would lose him that status as the weakest member of the crew. Unless, and I could see this being a move Oda pulls, unless he gets some kind of devil fruit that is like good but still leaves him as the weakest member. It's just that everyone else has become so much more powerful at this point. It's a boost for him, but everyone else is still a boost higher. Or he gets some kind of devil fruit that is like functionally useless. Like, I don't know, maybe Usopp will be the first character to ever get like the ocean fruit, which just is a fruit that counteracts itself, you know? You can turn into seawater, but because of the nature of devil fruits, it just doesn't work. I could see that being like a joke that Oda pulls, and then basically all that happens is Usopp loses the ability to swim. That's all it does for him. So with Usopp, there's a variety of pros and cons, but I think he's definitely the most likely of everyone we've discussed so far, and certainly the most likely of the Straw Hats. So I'm gonna put Usopp, I think maybe at the top. No, not quite at the top, not quite at the top, maybe like second from the top. So that's all the Straw Hats. Now I've got a few non-Straw Hat candidates that I want to throw out there. Now I already mentioned Zoro and Mihawk, and I've got another swordsman that I want to throw into the ring. A swordswoman, rather. Tashigi and Zoro have got to have some kind of final conflict, I think, in the final war. It's been like kind of built up with their various clashes, and Tashigi we have seen often dealing with feelings of inadequacy, not feeling strong enough, particularly in her clashes with Zoro. Tashigi is part of the Marines and presumably does have access to some kind of devil fruits. She works with Smoker, who is a established fruit user. He could give us some advice on what the best pick for her would be. I could certainly see a situation where at some point Tashigi is like, okay, we're gonna find the Straw Hats again, I'm gonna fight Zoro again, I don't feel confident enough. Maybe if I have a devil fruit, that's going to assist me and make me able to stand my own against him. I could see that being a sort of a pathway that she takes. Rather than Zoro and Mihawk being like, oh, there's a code, devil fruits are cheating, I don't think Tashigi would necessarily share that angle. I think she'd be okay with having a fruit as well as being a swordsman. So Tashigi, I actually think is quite likely. She could be an interesting one. That would be an interesting development for the Zoro and Tashigi relationship. Sticking within the Marines now, I want to talk about, I think, is he the most likely? I think of everyone I'm going to talk about, he is definitely top tier. He's in either the most likely or the second most likely, and that is gonna be Koby. That's right. Speaking of final confrontations, at some point we need to have the final confrontation between Luffy and Koby. That has been set up from pretty much the beginning. Koby's dream is to become an admiral of the Marines and be strong enough that he can defeat Luffy. And granted, we have seen Koby power spike pretty hard with the whole Hachinosu stuff. He's pretty tough. But Luffy has Gear 5, like come on Koby, I love you, but you're nowhere near at this point. So I could absolutely see it being a thing that in order to level the playing field, Koby gets himself a devil fruit. It could well be that the Marines have like a vault of devil fruits, because Koby wants to be an admiral, right? And every admiral that we've seen so far has had a devil fruit, unless I'm forgetting someone. It's not unheard of for people without one to be offered the position of admiral. Garp is the prime example there. Garp has no devil fruit. He was offered the position, but he turned it down because he preferred the amount of freedom that being a vice admiral gave him. But you know, our original admirals, Aokiji, Akainu, Kizaru, all have super powerful Logias. So I do wonder if it's possible the world government, or the Marines rather, have this vault of powerful devil fruits, and it's like, if you don't already have one, if you're going to become an admiral, we have all these powerful devil fruits and we can offer you one to make you even stronger. With world government stuff, I mean, we've seen Spandan had connections to get his mystery devil fruits. So I could see that being like a really interesting choice that Koby has to make. Say he's granted the position, Kong or someone leads him down and be like, look at all these devil fruits we've got for you. And then maybe he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to take that risk or not. But that could be really cool to see Koby get, that could be his like final power spike before actually confronting Luffy for the final time in the final war. Powerful as Koby is, he still has a long way to go before he is matching Luffy. Luffy is like up here, he's up in my attic. And while we're at it, let's throw Helmeppo into the running. Why not? That would be really fun. Give Helmeppo like a laser eye fruit, because he's got the visor already. Let's just make Helmeppo Cyclops. Why the hell not? That would be very fun, and that would be like such a disparity between when we first meet Helmeppo to maybe he becomes an admiral too and he gets that kind of fruit. That would be an incredible journey for Helmeppo. I kind of want to see that. So I'm going to put Koby top tier, very likely, and Helmeppo just below him, I think. Now I want to jump back a little bit to the Dressrosa Coliseum. Everyone who was in that Coliseum was fighting for the chance to win the Flare fruit, meaning everyone either wanted that fruit for themselves or to give that fruit to someone else. Bartolomeo, for example, already had a fruit of his own. He wanted to get that fruit in order to give it to Luffy. But there is a very significant contender in the Colosseum who had no fruit, who wanted that fruit for himself, and that is also very relevant to the current arc of Elbaf. That is Hajrudin. He was gunning for the Flare fruit because he wanted that fruit to make himself king of the giants. And now, I don't know if I can go into depth with Hajrudin without sort of touching on what's going on currently in the Elbaf arc in the manga. So I might put some time codes. If you're not caught up in the manga, just skip ahead. But Hajrudin aiming to be king of the giants, the Flare fruit could have gotten him there because the giants worship the sun god Nika, so that does fit very well. If he became pretty much a fire god, that's kind of like a sun god, right? He's also shown that he has interest in getting a devil fruit for himself. Loki, we've just seen the revelation of Loki's devil fruit, and I'm on the wavelength that I think Elbaf has a very strong chance of ending with Loki and Hajrudin reuniting as brothers and being joint kings of Elbaf, and so it would be cool if both of them had a devil fruit. Loki has got his mythical fruit and Hajrudin has some kind of other fruit, and that would, also help him when inevitably the Grand Fleet comes to help out in the final war. That would just be another big boost for Hajrudin. He's already very powerful as a giant unto himself, but a devil fruit on top of that would really make him a powerful figure. And I feel like I've got to throw out the Roxy Zebek situation with this, because we've seen in the flashback Rox was searching for 2 specific devil fruits that he wanted to complete his plan. We don't know exactly what 2 fruits that Rox was after. Maybe one of them was the one Loki already has. Maybe one of them was the darkness fruit that Blackbeard wound up with, but we don't know specifically what. He wanted to give one of them to Harold, so it could be a nice inherited will kind of aspect if we end up discovering that fruit that Rox wanted to give to Harold, if that ends up in Hajrudin's hands, the son of Harold, and that could be an inherited will thing. Harold gets that fruit and together they go on to help Luffy in the final war take down Emu. I could see that being a thing, and because Hajrudin has now become a lot more of a prominent character than he was post-Dressrosa, and we are still expecting some big things to come from the Grand Fleet as just a group, as a unit. We got that ominous message from the narrator about them going on to cause some kind of big incident. So, you know, we're going to be seeing more of Hajrudin, basically, and wouldn't it be nice if he had a little devil fruit power to go along with whatever that incident is. So, yeah, Hajrudin, I didn't think of Hajrudin until quite recently, but I could really see that happening. That feels high likelihood to me. I'm going to put Hajrudin pretty high up on my tier chart. And that brings me to, I think, my final candidate for this video. Last person, I think on the same level as Koby in terms of possibility. Like, I can really vividly see this scene playing out, and that is one Nefertati D Vivi. Based on what's been going on so far, it seems we are on course for Vivi to have a reunion with the Straw Hats and possibly to be a key player in the final war. Now, Vivi's whole thing is really diplomacy. If she were to become a full-fledged member of the crew, she doesn't really have any distinct kind of fighting style or anything like that would be able to help her in those tricky battle situations. And similar to my reasoning for Usopp and Tashigi, I could really see a situation where Vivi wants to help out her friends but doesn't feel like she is powerful enough to do so, and maybe she'll have access to a devil fruit and she'll be like, if this is the only way I can step up to the plate to help the Straw Hats and get them through whatever this situation is, then I'm gonna take it. You know, an act of desperation and risk in order to help her friends. That feels very in character for Vivi. She was willing to put her life on the line for Alabasta, so I could see her doing the same thing for the Straw Hats in the final war. Even if she doesn't know what power she's gonna get, she's just gonna get a power, just gonna take that bite of the fruit and go for it, and that can be another big thing. Oh, what's she gonna get? What power is it gonna be? On top of that, she is currently traveling with Big News Morgans and Wapol. Now, Big News Morgans is a member of the underworld, so 100% will have the kind of connections that would allow him to obtain some kind of crazy powerful devil fruit. And, you know, assuming that Vivi is still with Morgans and Wapol at this point, I could absolutely see just the 2 of them being like a devil and a second devil on her shoulders, encouraging her to take a bite out of the fruit and get that power. Wapol just for shits and gigs, I guess. Big News Morgans because it's gonna make for a great news story if the Princess of Alabasta turns up with a crazy power and starts wrecking shit. So Vivi, I'm actually gonna throw alongside Koby right at the top of this tier list. When Vivi gets brought back into the fold, she might feel like she's just not powerful enough to stand alongside the Straw Hats, and so she is going to dip into the fruit bowl to give herself that extra power spike that she feels like she needs. So there we go, there's all the characters that I thought of, and here's their alignment as to how likely it is that they may end up with a devil fruit, that we may see them go from a non-fruit user to a fruit user within the course of the show. I would absolutely love to see this happen with any one of them, just because it would instill that same kind of feeling of excitement as when Kaku and Khalifa got theirs. The trepidation and the speculation as to what kind of power that they're gonna get, especially if it's a power we don't know about. It's just gonna be really cool to see that play out, and I could 100% see that happening in Vivi's case and Koby's case as well. But please do let me know in the comments if you think I've missed anyone, or who of these characters you would most like to see get a devil fruit before the series closes out. Please do leave a like on this video if you have not already, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.